The following is a letter sent en masse to every notable man, woman, being, robot, or beast of science. My esteemed colleagues, as I'm sure many of you know, I have been performing experiments on the gate, trying in vain to look for a way to pass through it from this side. As I was sitting in my field lab, running yet another test on the substance that makes up the barrier, the radio on my desk suddenly blared to life. Mostly static, but through it all I could hear a voice, one wholly unfamiliar to me. Using my equipment, I was able to triangulate the source of the broadcast as the gate itself. Quickly, I started recording the broadcast for later study. Enclosed within this letter is a tape containing the broadcast in full with the static filtered out. Please send me correspondence at your earliest convenience as to what you can make of it in each of your respective fields. Sincerely, Professor Hachi. You insert the tape into the player and hit play. Slowly, I became aware of the sensation of existing. Existing not just by myself, but in a space. Not only a space, but a particular moment of time that was ever changing, ever progressing from one moment to the next. I opened my eyes to find them buffeted by a great force. I squinted, and my eyes dried out. Around me was a space, true, but an intangible one. A cascade of colors that had never even been thought of before. And yet there they were before me. In the distance, if distance was something that could be measured in this unusual space, I heard a voice call out to me, to my name. My lips formed the shape of a response, but could not produce the sound that wanted to escape them. More voices in other directions joined it, forming not a beautiful chorus, but a discordant harmony. Their words blurred together until I could no longer make out from what direction each sound came from. The wind was fierce, and I could feel my strength leaving me. Suddenly, in a flash, the voices unionized into one single force of will and spoke these words: "Business or pleasure?" I blinked, and I was in a new space, a new time. I was now standing in front of a kiosk, an elder man inside. His features were aged, but kind. Beneath my feet lay large tiles of alternating shades of blue and white, and above I heard the high-pitched whine of an intercom carelessly left on. "Business or pleasure?" the man repeated himself. I cleared my throat once, no longer feeling spellbound. Where am I? Gate 4. Business or pleasure? It seemed like the man would repeat himself until he got the answer he wanted. That is the eternal question, isn't it? I thought to myself. What are we here in this world to do? Conduct business or experience life's many pleasures? Sex, booze, games. What is the point of it all? Do we have a higher purpose? Some business we must do before time runs out? As he repeats the question yet again, the hints of impatience visible in the wrinkles at the corner of his eyes, he stares at me, unblinking. I decide I must make a decision. Business, I suppose, I say reluctantly. There wasn't time for games anymore, not at my age. Enjoy your visit, the gentleman says. Before I blink, and everything is gone again. A cacophony explodes in my eardrums, and I wince in pain as I feel my body split apart, atom by atom, and spread across the entire fabric of space-time. Potential energy builds, and then with a loud crack, the elastic broke, snapped back, and there I was. Pushed to the ground by some unknown force, my limbs splayed out and I landed hard, face down. I laid there for a moment, grimacing in pain. Gradually, though, it eased, and I lifted my face up out of the grass. I was nose to nose with some kind of curious cattle. While its black and white pattern was intimately familiar to me, there were many aspects of it that were unknown. Its eyes, usually black and dumb, had an almost human like iris in it. In it, I could see my face reflected, and within not just a primal curiosity, but what it could be described as an intelligence, not a creature or a beast. And while I would hesitate to call it a man, it was more like me than some people I've met. After that moment, I pulled my arms beneath me, feeble and weak, but just enough to bring myself into a sitting and then a standing position. The cattle's eyes tracked my own, now looking up at me with an eerie sense of consciousness to them. I gave it a gentle pat behind the ear and then observed my surroundings. I was standing in an open field where many other cattle could be seen grazing at varying distances away, no fence enclosing them in sight. I turned around, and behind me I saw a sight that I have not forgotten since. A giant wall, it must have been at least 20 stories high, stretched out in front of me as far as the eye could see in either direction. Its shadow got about halfway between me and itself. Made of a roughly hewn gray stone, it had a kind of majesty to it. Above it, I could make out a tall clock tower, at least 20 stories more. Its hands told the time of 4 o'clock, and curiously, it went up to a mysterious 13th hour. It came to a pointed tip at the top. The cattle moved sadly beside me. The tower seemed to stare at me as if it had its mind of its own. As if it had a mind of its own. I shook my head, clearing away the strange feeling. The cattle looked up at me sadly. Looking down for the first time, I noticed my clothes had somehow changed. Gone were the baggy shorts and graphic tee. In their place was a leather vest and trousers. This was also strange, I thought. Giving the cattle one final scratch, I resolved to head to the wall. The cattle looked forlorn as it watched me go. The scale of the wall became more and more drastic as I neared. As my face and body were cast in shadow, I began to slow. The grass did not grow so close to the wall, either. On my left, I could make out a dirt path of some sort, leading to a small gate. I made my way over there, slowly, as my body still ached all over from whatever ordeal I had just been on. Sometime, maybe 10 minutes later, I arrived at the path next to the wall. A small gate, maybe 10 feet wide and across, stood before me. Dare I knock? The tape ends here.